Everybody talks about God bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt, but nobody talks about what Egypt brought out with them. Because although they had left Egypt physically, Egypt hadn't left their minds. The moment they saw Pharaoh coming, they panicked. They wanted to go back. They forgot everything God had already done for them prior. And if I'm honest, I think a lot of us have been there. God begins leading us into a new season, but old fears, mindsets still try to follow us. When I was reading Exodus chapter 14, one thing really stood out to me. The children of Israel were no longer slaves. God had already delivered them. But the moment fear showed up, they started thinking like slaves again. Fear has a way of making us forget God's faithfulness. It makes us question His promises. It makes us wonder if we heard Him correctly. It even makes us believe we're safer going back to what's familiar, even when what was familiar was hurting us. Think about it. Egypt wasn't a place of freedom. It was a place of bondage, a place of oppression, a place where they cried out to God for deliverance. Yet when life became difficult, they wanted to go back. Why? Because familiar often feels safer than freedom. And I think many of us wrestle with that. God calls us forward, but part of us want to run back to what we've always known. Not because it's better, but because it's familiar. As I continued reading, I realized God wasn't just delivering them from Egypt. He was teaching them how to trust Him. Leaving Egypt was one miracle, but learning to live free, that was a process they had to learn. That God was trustworthy. They had to learn they didn't have to live in fear anymore. They had to learn they weren't slaves anymore. And that kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight. As I was studying this, it challenged me personally, because I can see myself being like the children of Israel as well. Especially when God is asking me to trust Him in a new season. And in those moments, I have to remind myself that just because fear shows up doesn't mean God has left. It doesn't mean I've missed Him. It doesn't mean His promise has changed. It simply means I have another opportunity to trust Him, to invite Him into the areas where I'm having flashbacks, to talk to Him honestly about what I'm feeling, to ask Him to heal me, and to ask Him to help me to trust Him one step at a time. Because I don't believe God is only interested in getting us to the promise. I believe He also cares about healing us along the journey. Sometimes the hardest part isn't leaving Egypt. Sometimes the hardest part is believing you don't have to live like you're still there. Maybe that's where some of us are today. God has brought us out of one season, but He's also inviting us to let go of the mindsets that belong to that season. Because freedom isn't just about where God brought you from. It's also about learning to think differently because of where He's taking you. Don't let yesterday's fears keep you from tomorrow's promise, a journey to purpose.